Hello and welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk all about styling text, and we're going to get into fonts and how we can style all of our text. And so here we go. Let's jump right in. This might be a little bit of a long video because I'm just going to hit a lot of things here in one video, all about how you might want to style your text. So we go over here and let's just go back to our index.html from our previous video. And we have quite a lot here we can work with. So if I go back here to the index, ooh, you know what? Let's well, this is fine. So what I'm gonna do here is let's go to our styles and let's get rid of some of these different colors. Let's get rid of our P tag right here because we're gonna mainly focus maybe on this P tag or paragraph tag. And so I'm gonna scroll down. I'm just gonna add this down here at the bottom here. And the first thing we'll talk about is let's do text align first. So by default, text align. So if you do the property would be text dash align. This is going to be left. Okay. So if I refresh now, our paragraphs looks exactly the same. We could do center. And now this is centered. Now it's important to note that this is centered, it looks centered on the page because the paragraph is a block level element. If I were using a span to hold some text and I try to text align center, since that will, since the span will actually only be the size of the text align won't do anything within that. So the width of the element needs to be larger than the content within it to even notice that there is alignment happening. We can also do right. And that'll be right aligned. And then the other text align we can do is justify. These are the four most common. Now this isn't going to show much right now because it doesn't go all the way across. So let's go ahead and let's go to Cupcake Ipsum. And let's get five long paragraphs here. That's quite the size. And what I'm going to do is let's add another paragraph tag. You know what? Let's add it to the bottom of the screen here. So underneath this unordered list, we'll do a paragraph tag, and I'm just going to post that material right there. And I will go ahead and clean up some of that. All right, so now you can see that the left of each line and the right of each line are straight down, kind of like you would see in a newspaper article or something like that. So that is text align justify. Now, if I would just make that left, let's look at the difference between justify and left. Now you can see that it's left aligned, but the right side isn't like that at all. So the right side doesn't quite fill the entire area. And then it'd be hard to notice too, but we could do center here. And now this looks a little sloppy. You usually won't use center aligned stuff if you have a lot of long paragraphs like this. It'll generally be, you know, some sort of like, you know, up here, you know, I want the single line to be text aligned centered. Okay, so now that we've talked about text align center or just text alignment in general, well, you know what? Let's just leave that. And I'm gonna put this as I'm gonna put this as left just to take it back to the default. And then let's make a comment here next to this, and this will tell us this could be left, right, or left, center, right, justify. Now those are the most common. Here we go. So text align, that's not going to do anything because it's going to be left aligned, just like the default. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is let's talk about text decoration. Okay, that's another thing we can do. But first, one thing that we have here with text decoration is on these links they are underlined. And let's just pretend that we didn't want those underlined. So let's go ahead and do A, and we want our links to be text decoration, and then we'll do none. Okay, and now you can see that those are not underlined, those texts. Now, normal text within the flow of your paragraph, you probably want to have a good reason for removing the underline. The underline does help that stand out, and it helps the users know that that is a text. But if we were building a navigation menu or something like this, we probably would remove the underline unless just our styling dictates that we wanted it. Now there are a few other things we could do here. Let's see what we have for text decoration. We could do line through. And if I do that, it's just basically going to put a line through the middle, kind of like a strike in a Word document or something like that. So that puts a line right through the text there. So we got underline. You can do overline. That, and it puts the lines above the text. And so that you guys can discover a few of the other ones. These are the most common, are probably going to be underline and none that you use. But you might use strike through for some reason, you know, if you're making a correction or something like that. Oops, strike, line through, not strike through. So yeah, so you could do that. But I'm just gonna actually put this back. You know what we'll do? Let's enhance our target here to make it a little more specific. And let's just say I only want my A tags that are within my nav to be text decoration none. Okay. And here what we'll do is we'll do a comment and we'll say this could be none. It could be underline, line through, or line or overline. Okay. There we go. So now we've talked about a little bit about text decoration. Let's talk about text transform. Another thing we could do here is we could use text transform. And what text transform does is we could say, hey, I want this all to be lowercase. And no matter how I have it typed in the HTML, the CSS is going to make these all lowercase. We could also do uppercase. Now the entire word's uppercase. We can do words. Well, yeah. So let's see here. Words may not be all that well supported. We could do capitalize, and that's the same. So you should probably use capitalize instead of words. But basically, it's going to capitalize each word in the text if you use capitalize. Okay, so text transform, we can do, I'll put a little comment here, we can do lowercase, uppercase, and we can do capitalize, and I'll just kind of leave it at that there so you can see some different options that you can do. So to play around with text transform, the other thing we could do is we can actually affect we get, you know, traditionally in a book or something, your paragraphs may have an indentation. So what we could do is, unless I'm just gonna go down here on this one, and let's give this a class equal indented. Okay, and back on our styles, I only want to affect this paragraph here. So what we'll do is we're gonna say we'll target our indented. And we're going to say text indent, and let's just do 35 pixels, something like that. And now you can see that this only the first line of the paragraph is indented. So if I had a lot of different paragraphs, if this were made up, then the first line in each paragraph would be indented. And so depending on where you live and the look that you're going for, if you want it to look more like a book, you would probably do something like that. And you could do a lot less if you want. You could say 12 pixels. That's not quite enough though, probably. So I'd probably do a minimum of 18 or 24 pixels just to make sure it's noticeable that that's what you're trying to do there. All right, so that's text indent. We can actually also do letter spacing. So if we want to control how far apart the letters are, we can do letter spacing, and let's just do 4 pixels. Now this is going to look ridiculous, but this may be really useful in sort of a header or some sort of stylized thing that you're trying to do. But letter spacing will actually put whatever you define here as a space in between each letter. So that actually looks kind of cool. You wouldn't want to do that in a long paragraph that makes it hard to read. But instead, I may want to do that just maybe instead of doing that there, I may say, hey, I want all of my H1s to have letter spacing like that. So you could do, I want all the H1s on my site to do letter spacing 4 pixels, okay? And boom, now just that header is spaced out like that. That looks pretty cool. So there may be a style reason you'd want to do that. So that's letter spacing. Let's see what else we got. Let's talk about line height. Okay, so the amount of distance here. So let's go back to our indented paragraph here, and let's put in line height and see what happens. So I'm going to put in something really noticeable like 12 pixels here, and you see that this really kind of gets cluttered up here, and that's because one thing we didn't talk about. Let's also work at font size, and I'm going to change the font size here to 12 pixels. So that'll have the same line height as font size. And now you can see it looks a lot more normal. But what we might do here is to double our line height. And now we have a smaller font with a double line height. So this line height is the height basically of each line. So let me see if I can, I guess it's not going to highlight that or anything, but you can see the difference here. And I can even put this up. So let's put this back. Let's put this on 14 pixels and leave the line height at 24. So it's still a lot more spaced out. If I put this, let's say, on 14 pixels, then it's going to be there. And then if you go smaller than the font size, it's actually going to start overlapping. Okay, so it gets a little messy, and I can even do a line height of like say 1 pixel. And wow, look at that. That you might do that for some sort of style purposes or whatever, but that's pretty crazy looking. But I just wanted to show you the line height property and what that does. I'm going to set this back to 18. Just give it a little bit of extra line height there. Okay, so yeah, we talked about font size. Font size controls the actual size of the font and line height. Let's go now and let's actually discuss fonts, okay? There are, what we'll want to do, let's play with this indented paragraph just a little bit more. I rather like messing with this since it's such a long long bit of text that it can really show you what's going on. So let's do font family. Now, font family is how we're going to choose our fonts, and we can do quite a few, like what they call generic ones. So there's sans serif. Okay, so we'll start with generic fonts here, and sans serif will look like this. Possibly let's look at it on the H1 just to kind of see the difference here. So I'm going to do a font family sans serif. And there we go. So this sans serif, there's no what they call a little serif, which is like the little points that stick off there. This is just a generic sans serif font that is available. And then if I do a serif font, then now you can see there's these little pointy things coming off the bottoms, and that makes it, more like, I don't know how to explain it, more like a Times New Roman or something, but it has a serif these little points coming off the edges, okay? So that is that. We also have a few more we can try, and I'll try them on that H1. There are monospace. These are just the generic ones. There's monospace. And now you can see that the look of that. That's kind of cool looking sometimes, like to do a monospaced font like that. Let's see, then we have cursive, which is kind of a more loose. This isn't going to actually look like cursive, the generic one, but it'll look more handwritten. Okay. And then let's try fantasy. This is generic as well. And I didn't spell it correctly, so it doesn't know what's going on there. What am I doing here? Fantasy. Well, I must not have any fantasy type fonts on my computer, and that brings me to my next point. We can use actual fonts that we're used to using. Let me show you what I mean here. Let's say my computer has a font, like I would rather this be rendered out in, let's say, Times New Roman, okay? So let's go ahead and try that and see what happens here. And if it's more than one word, then you're gonna have to put it in quotes. So Times New Roman. Refresh that. Okay, there we go. So we have the Times New Roman font. Maybe I want to do some sort of font, like my favorite font. Let's try one that may not be on, this isn't my favorite, but let's say, let's see what that does. And let's go now to our fonts here. Indented, here we go. So that's Lucida Console. Now, let's try Open Sans. Okay, so Open Sans may not exist on my computer, and there may be other ones that don't exist. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to separate and with a comma, and you want to fall back to a, like, I want to do like a serif here. So you'll want to fall back to a generic that is close to what you have. Let me just change this to sans serif in case the fonts are not available on the person's computer who's looking at them, okay? So let's see. Sans serif. Okay. So the fact that it changed when I changed to the generic tells me that the Open Sans font does not exist on my computer. Now I could add that through Google, but I guess the whole thing I want to get across is you can put multiple fonts in your font family. You just need to separate them by a comma, and if there's a space in them, you have to surround them by quotes. And you always want to end with a generic, either sans or sans serif or one of the generic ones we talked about, so that if the font isn't available, it falls back down the list of fonts until it finds one. And then eventually, if all of your fonts you meant to use don't exist, it will load the generic, at least that you want to choose. So make sure you pick more than one font family there, unless you're going to go with just the generics. But I thought it'd be interesting to show you. A lot of people want to do this. Google Fonts. So let's just look at how we can actually put a Google font in here. And let's just find, there's that Open Sans one I was talking about. Let's add this Goblin one. That's kind of cool. Okay. All right. So, I'm going to select this style. Dismiss that. So this will actually give us the link here that we want to use. So if we copy that, and in our index.html up here in the head, we're going to want to, above our CSS file there, we're going to want to paste in the link that Google gives us. Okay, so Google will give us a link, a font here that we can get. Now we can use this font from Google. So in order to do that, though, we need to go down in our styles.css, and the font is called Goblin 1. So we can just go ahead and select that. Okay, and let's put that on the H1. And again, this has a space in it, so what we have to do is put that in quotes. And let's go back and refresh here. Oh, nice. And now you can see that it's using that Goblin 1 font, and it's coming from Google Fonts. So if I go down and look at my sources, we got fonts.google APIs and static here, and you can see that it's loading in that font file for me to use in my thing. Now, be careful because this actually adds time. So if I look at my network, it actually added some time. In fact, this added 76 milliseconds in order to get that font from Google. So you're not going to want to go crazy with adding a ton of different fonts because it has to make extra network requests and load those font families from an external place. So that would be loading the font from Google to use it in your site. But doing it this way, the benefit of doing it this way is that your fonts will be consistent because your font family will be loaded in your project rather than depending on a font existing on the person's computer who's using your website. Okay, so that's 3 different ways we can use fonts. We can use generic fonts. We can name the font we want to use if it's available on the computer, or we can import fonts rather from Google Fonts, which is probably the easiest and most recommended way to do it. And there's a few other fonts, but you know, you can actually import them like this. So you can visit, just if you Google fonts, and you can actually go through tons of fonts and find the ones that you want. So I just showed you an example of what it would look like, but that's fonts, and that's all about styling. Now there's other things you can do with styles, obviously, but I just wanted to kind of show you the most common ways to style up your fonts. And you know what? I did skip a kind of important one that you'll use all the time, and I don't know why I skipped it, but let's look at that. We can do, in this indented, we can do text decoration. Oh, no, it's not decoration. It's, what is it called? Let me see here. Ooh. It's text. I don't know why we don't use this one very often, but I want to show it to you. Yeah, it's not text, it's font. So there's font style, and pretty much the only thing you're going to use this for is if you want to make something italic. And if I refresh now, you can see that these are all italic, or they're, slanted italic font. So there's that, and then there's also font weight that we didn't talk about. And font weight would be bold most of the time. or normal. Both of those could be normal or, italic for font style. So we can do both here, font style, italic. So we can make it bold and italic. And if we really wanted to, I mean, we could do text decoration and make it underlined. So it can be bold, italic, and underlined. But anyway, I just wanted to show you that. And those, I think, cover most of what we want to do. Now, by default, font weight would be normal. Font style would be normal. And text decoration would be none, unless it's a link. So let's add just a couple comments here. So here for this could be bold. And if your font supports it, you can even do stuff like, oops, I kind of gave it away. You can do bolder. You could do normal. And you could even do some value type stuff like 300 and 500. So there's different ones. It just depends on what all your font supports that you're using. But that basically is the thickness of each letter. So it could be bold or normal. And then for style, we can do normal or italic, basically. Those are the most supported and most useful. Most of the time, that's all you're going to use with font style. And in text decoration, a lot of times this is your underline, normal, overline, and line through. Okay. All right, so that is how you can style up your fonts or your text on your website. So I hope that's helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next video.